I would say that certain stereotypes are portrayed and perpetuated in movies. That even when trying to kind of refute those stereotypes and push back, they reinforce them.
I think there's an issue of constantly having characters of like the same race fall into one like storyline and one character plot, which I think is just continuing to like uphold certain stereotypes and not allow for there to be an equal amount of representation.
What's the trope where the women aren't really included in the conversation other than when a man is talking to them? It's like some test that they, in a lot of movies, do not pass it, because like every woman in the movie is just basically like a love interest or like some sort of side character.
I feel like in certain categories of different movies, like action and adventure movies per se, there's never really like I mean, not never, but it's harder for the movie industry to depict like a strong female lead without making her like a sex icon or like changing the outfit to be more attractive. For example, like I was saying before, like the Marvel movies and how usually it's the male figures who do like all of the work and stuff, and then the women are kind of just there for appeal.
Representation might mean different things to different people. If we asked a cognitive neuroscientist, for instance, they might be interested in how, let's say, consciousness is represented in the activity patterns of neurons. Now, if you asked a social scientist what representation means, then we might be thinking about how a particular type of people or a group is represented or portrayed in the news media or in popular culture. So why is representation an important question within popular movies and popular culture in general? I think there are several reasons for this. So on the one hand, I believe that popular culture, movies, even music, provide us ideas and images to think about certain concepts. So if I'd asked you what an alien looked like, for instance, if you've seen the great Ridley Scott series, you might think of an alien in such a way that it is represented. But likewise, I can ask you what a superhero looks like. And here, perhaps the first image that comes to mind is a tall, white, muscular person, like Superman, but not maybe someone in a wheelchair. But if I ask you to think about Stephen Hawking, someone who definitely did not have the physical capabilities of this traditional superhero, who still was able to really literally bring about miracles, I think this shows the importance that popular culture will also display people with certain disabilities that can still achieve superhero level. So I think this is generally important. We did see when we looked at the cast that white characters are indeed in the majority, followed by Black African Americans, East Asian, and multiracial characters. We also found that white characters, compared to underrepresented characters, actually were displayed much larger on screen. Yeah, so this is a cinematographic technique called scaling. Yeah? Finally, characters with an East Asian race were more often placed in the periphery, so not taking on central character roles. But we did also find some things that really surprised us. So, for instance, Black and African American characters had a lot more screen time compared to white characters. So they were just shown more often. Whether this has a different effect to the scaling that I just mentioned in terms of how we process this is something we don't know yet. So one surprising thing we found is that movies that have a higher representation of Black and African American characters, those movies actually received higher Metacritic ratings compared to movies that primarily feature white characters. So Metacritic is actually a score that is composed by professional film critics that rate an overall movie. One thing that is often unknown is that movies that do feature characters from underrepresented groups actually receive much less production budget. So the money that is being offered to movies to generate the movie. But if I asked you what is one of the most important variables to predict a movie's success, it's actually production budget. Right? So here we already, when we think about equity, have a disconnect, that movies that do feature people from underrepresented groups generally receive less production budget. But this is just one level. Another level would be the cast. In Barbie, we do have a heightened number of underrepresented characters, but those characters might just end up playing roles in the periphery that are not really central to the plot development. And some tests have been developed that probe this. There is the Bechdel test or the Duvernay test that really look into, for instance, when women are talking on screen, what are they talking about? And here it's very often the case that women are talking about men, not themselves, or how can they be helpful to that the main character achieves their ends in the movie. Likewise, I don't think that this means that we have to solely produce movies now that completely and radically try to transform current societal patterns, because movies do remain an important zeitgeist that just captures and maps our current societal landscape. But going forward, I think it's just important that we generate some more awareness of both of the positive and negative effects that certain types of representations can have on audiences.